Hi everyone, and welcome to the Tech for Good live show. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Tom Raftery. I'm with SAP. I'm a global VP futurist and innovation evangelist. And with me, I have my co-host, Chris. Chris, would you like to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Thanks very much. Hi, I'm Chris Kernaghan. I am an SAP consultant with a global SI and an SAP mentor. And I'm very happy to be here with Tom, indulging in my usual love of technology and stories for good.
Technology and good stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Alberto saying hi. Hi, Alberto. Tell us where you're based, Alberto, and let's bring that into the conversation as well. We get people from all over the world, so it's cool to see. We in the meantime, we have some interesting stories lined up for you today, I think. The first one is in the... Oh, hang on. We've got Mark Finneran joining us as well.
Yes.
Let me just switch over there. And Peter. Hey, Mark. Nice to see you. Peter, great to see you too.
Good to see you, Peter.
Time to put on your learning cap, Peter. Very good. I like it. I like it. The first story we have for you today, or the first group of stories we have for you today, are from the transportation arena. And I thought the first story was extremely cool, but then I wouldn't I? And it is about Porsche.
Yes, you would.
The Porsche Taycan set a new world record in what city was it in? New Orleans.
Yes.
By driving over 100 miles an hour indoors. That's actually 160 kilometers an hour in real money. You should Google this if you haven't seen it. This article is in Electrek, and I can send anyone links who wants them. But there's a beautiful video that goes with it as well, and it's just absolutely stunning. They did it in New Orleans because there's a conference center there. I assume it's a bit like the Fira one in Barcelona. It's enormous. And they drove the car. It's a Taycan. It's a fully electric car. They drove it. I've seen this car driving on the ramps of aircraft carriers, but I've never seen it. I've never seen it do this. Go up to 160 kilometers an hour indoors. And of course, because it's electric, there's no emissions, so they don't have to worry about exhaust fumes and ventilation or anything like that. So very straightforward to do. But it's a very cool video. If you get a chance, check it out. Mark,
it really is.
It's coming to us from San Francisco. Niraj. Yeah, Niraj. It's very cool as well. Chris, what were we going to say there? Sorry.
So there were three things I took away from this story. The first one is those polished concrete floors look stunning, and I pity the person who has to clean them up. I know.
Look at the reflection on it. It's amazing, isn't it?
Exactly. But the other thing I took away from the story, which it actually goes into, is the fact, as you alluded to, they can do it indoors because there's no emissions. Okay, but there's another part in the story which actually says that the level of electric car ownership in Norway is such that their most recent tunnel cost them less because they didn't have to have as many ventilation shafts built into the structure of the tunnel.
That's right.
Which is a phenomenal thing, and it's hidden in the story. I was reading down through the story, and I just went, hold on a second, and then went back and then read it and thought, oh, and there's a second order effect.
Yeah, I was in Norway in 2019. Yeah. I went on a 2-week drive around Norway in an EV. I rented an EV and drove around for 2 weeks around Norway. Yeah. And when you're over on the west coast of Norway, over around fjord country, the number of tunnels they have are incredible. I was going from one fjord to another, and I took a wrong turn. And when you go into the tunnels there, they have signs up which says, they have two numbers on them, one above the other. The top number is the amount of kilometers to the other end of the tunnel, and the bottom number is the number of kilometers you've already done in the tunnel you're in. I took a wrong turn.
So if you get stuck, which is your shortest way.
Exactly. I take a wrong turn, head into this tunnel, and I see 27-1. longest tunnel in the world, 27 kilometers of tunnel.
Jeez.
Unbelievable. I drove on through. They've got DAB radio there as well, digital radio. So that'll you'll pick that up in the tunnels, no problem. Whereas normal radio you wouldn't. It was amazing. Yeah. So they've got tons and tons of tunnels in Norway. So to your point about building tunnels and not needing as much ventilation with the amount of electric cars they have, that's actually a big deal in Norway. Wouldn't be so much where there aren't as many tunnels.
Absolutely.
So we have some people showing up in the comments there. Mark saying hi from San Francisco. Niraj is based in India, if I remember correctly. Niraj, correct me if I'm wrong. Simon from Hemel Hempstead. How you doing, Simon? Thanks for joining us. Benjamin is talking to us from Abu Dhabi. We're getting people from all over. It's amazing. I think the obsession with car performance is misguided, says Mark, and Chris. Someone called Chris responded saying true.
I just really enjoy. I have a great love of driving. I really do, and yes, I have driven many different types of cars, but ultimately I just like the being in the car and just driving and being listening to good podcasts or audiobooks or something, or just the company of a road trip. The performance of the car, you've got the speed limits and everything, so you're limited in what you can actually do. But yes, I do think I like. As a child or as a teenager, I never thought that getting there was half the fun of the trip. As an adult, I do actually find that getting there is a lot better, especially whenever you're in a bit more control of how you get there.
Well, I'll tell you, Mark. My last car, Mark, was a Prius.
Yes.
And my current car is a Nissan Leaf. So, I'm not, I don't feel the need for speed. So Niraj is from India. That's right. I met Niraj when I was in Bangalore a couple of years back, if I remember. Bent is saying hi from Denmark. That's nice. Peter, unlike Top Gun, there is no need for speed. That's fair enough. Ludicrous mode is ludicrous. Very true. Peter's got a 2012 Mustang convertible. I presume that's electric, Peter.
I'm not entirely convinced that it is. Whether it's a US or a UK variant or an EU variant, that may decide your place in either the good place or the not so good place.
Yeah. Well, Peter's based in Canada, so it's going to be cold. There's not a lot of time you could use the top down.
That's right. That is true.
Someone saying hi from Bangalore as well. It just shows up here as LinkedIn user. That's a privacy setting on your LinkedIn account, I think. Gregor saying hi from Poland. When did you last care about the performance of your taxi? Not sure. And Chicago. Kevin's from Chicago. Okay, we'll get back to the stories. And we'll get on to the next one because we have a 3.7. Ouch. Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Redonkulous. I can't imagine the miles per gallon on that. I don't want to know. Here's a story I know you liked, Chris, and I liked it as well, obviously. Jaguar Land Rover have decided that from 2025 onwards, so, nearly 4 years, 3 and a bit years from now, they're only going to be making electric Jaguar cars. Now, this is Jaguar Land Rover. The Land Rover part are going to continue making internal combustion engine cars until 2036. They say now. I can imagine them dialing that back a bit. But for now, anyway, from 2025 on, all Jaguars will be fully electric. And their first one, the I-Pace, is a really good car. It's a fine EV. It doesn't have the same kind of efficiency levels as a Tesla, but very few cars do. But it's a well-appointed EV, and it was one of the first non-Tesla really good EVs on the market. So they have a bit of a track record in the space, so fair dues to them for that. And you had a point you wanted to refer to in this story, Chris.
So I took a couple of things away from this article, and let's not kid ourselves. This has to confer a competitive advantage to JLR. And what started me thinking about it was the fact that they are not closing any UK factories, and that's where the predominance of their manufacturing is. So how does that actually help? And one of the things that we have commented on many times in this is that EVs actually have fewer parts and less maintenance. So then I started to think about, well, if it has less parts, then what does that do to the actual supply chain?
Just
And
to
I
put
dug
that
a
in
little
perspective,
bit.
Chris,
Yeah.
a typical internal combustion engine vehicle has about 2,000 parts, 2,000 moving parts
Yes.
in its drivetrain. A typical EV has about 20. So that's 1,980 fewer parts that need to be lubricated and that can break down on the whole thing.
Exactly. So I did, and you're absolutely right. So given where we are with supply chains in the UK at the moment, for various reasons, pandemic and Brexit, then the more you can actually make locally and the more you can actually do, then the stronger your supply chain will be if you keep it in a narrower part. And then I dug into the battery, for example, and JLR, actually large investors into startups in the UK, which are creating the UK equivalent of the Tesla Gigafactory somewhere in the UK.
In
So
Coventry,
when
I
you
think,
put all
isn't
that together, pardon?
I think it's in Coventry.
I think it is. It doesn't say where it is. It's another Guardian article.
Yeah,
So it is, but
I
I
read
think
about
it
it a couple of
is.
days ago.
Yeah. So when you actually put all that together, it does make absolute sense, and it's a great headline, and it's an absolutely fantastic move. But it very, very definitely will make life easier for JLR in the future.
Sourcing.
So it will.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The whole Brexit thing. Neeraj is saying that Tata Motors, more than half of all the cars sold by them in the last 3 months were EVs. That's a huge change. That's impressive. I wasn't aware of that, Neeraj. Yeah. Thanks for pointing that out. That's incredible.
One thing that would be interesting, and Neeraj could probably answer that, is if we were to make the assumption that, given where Neeraj lives and given Tata's major market is in India, is what does the charging infrastructure actually look like within India, and how is that progressing? Because that's actually quite a large milestone for Tata. So it would be interesting to see how that, because we've seen and we've reported on other stories about the UK charging market and its consolidation, or not its consolidation, but the influx of money from petrochemical companies to own that market and to see what's happening there. Yeah, so Neeraj, if you have an answer to that, it would be really interesting to hear.
Drop it in the comments. Or comment. Yeah. When I was in Bangalore a couple of years back and met Neeraj, he's a colleague. When I was there was charging infrastructure at the SAP office in Bangalore, but I didn't see anywhere else. Now, I didn't get around and look either, so there may have been some around the place. There's a lot of electric motorbikes hitting the road, if you'll pardon the pun, in India, and the tuk-tuks as well are starting to be electrified.
Yeah.
And okay, there we have an answer already. So Neeraj is just saying nowhere near where it should be. I think that's the same everywhere, Neeraj. Where I am in Spain, Spain has 5 times fewer chargers than the EU average. So we're not too great here in Spain either. Predominantly home and office charging stations. That's pretty similar to Spain, particularly where I am in the south of Spain. It's not great either. So yeah, you're not alone there, Neeraj. We'll move on. The next story that I came across that I thought was interesting was this one. We're kind of getting into the autonomous vehicle space now. Mobileye. Mobileye were an Israeli startup that were bought by Intel a couple of years back, and they were in the kind of mobile vision space, hence the name Mobileye. And they are after putting a LiDAR on a chip, which is a hugely impressive feat. It's amazing. So for people who don't know what a LiDAR is, it's think of it like a radar, but it uses light and it's used for basically seeing. Now, the kind of typical ones you would see on autonomous vehicles today, you'd see kind of domes on the roof of autonomous vehicles with the thing spinning around. And the thing spinning around is a series of mirrors which diffracts the laser light out, where it bounces back and then is read, and that way the car kind of figures out what's going on around it. But this new LiDAR that Mobileye have developed is using a different technology whose name escapes me. It's in the article. It begins with an F, flow something 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 something, and they've fitted it on a chip which is about the size of a credit card, which is an amazing feat.
It's frequency modulated continuous wave technology, FMCW.
I was not going to remember that. I was not going to remember that. Thank you, co-host, for helping me out there. It's,
no, we're all good.
And as well as getting this on a chip 4 to 5 years ahead of schedule, they had thought they would get to this point in around 2025, 2026, and they got there start of 2021. They announced this at CES and they showed it. It's like I said, it's about a credit card size, slightly smaller than a credit card. And the other really impressive thing is they brought down the price 2 orders of magnitude. Yes. It's in the hundreds of dollars, whereas LiDARs are typically $10,000, and that's down from about $50,000 to $80,000, 5-6 years ago. So, I mean, this is huge for the future of autonomous vehicles. It means, they will all be able to afford maybe a couple of these, maybe 3 or 4 of them, and this particular type of LiDAR, again, whose name escapes me, and don't bother, Chris, it's okay, we don't need it. They're even better than the original ones with the spinning mirrors. They can see further and at higher granularity as well. So, this is huge. This is a really amazing feat.
That was one of the reasons why LiDAR was used over radar, is the fact that, that ability to actually have a centimeter-based resolution, put it over and above what radar was actually capable of. The other thing is that because it has that resolution, the edge detection is actually better. So being able to actually detect the edge of things is better. So that's good. Where it falls down is actually it does get hampered by weather, because it is laser based, it is light based, whereas radar is radio waves. So but the ability actually to use multiple on a single vehicle will actually increase, hopefully increase that resolution, and decrease that sticking point. But yeah, this is actually seriously cool, and it kind of digs Intel out of a hole.
It does, big time.
So it does, because they have activist investors who are taking the company to task, especially after losing Apple as a customer, and also taking it out from beyond just traditional CPUs into other types of chips, and seeing what's out there. We look at what ARM have done with their chipsets and where they're used and how they are used, and it's just phenomenal.
It is. And Victor's chiming in on the comments there, going back to my comment about the car chargers in Spain and the lack of them. And he's also saying that we had a special tax on solar energy here in Spain for a number of years that was instituted by the Partido Popular, if I remember correctly, they threatened to bring it in around 2011, and then they brought it in around 2015. But it destroyed the solar industry for years here, because people were afraid that the tax was going to be implemented. And so all the investments in solar disappeared. It was called a sun tax when it rolled out, and it was as soon as the socialist government came in 2018, that was written off straight away, and now we've moved ahead, and solar industry is again starting to come. I mean, destroying the solar industry in Spain. I mean, good God, how short-sighted can you be? Anyway, I think there's a rumor that this legislation, the sun tax, was written for the politicians by some of the incumbent utilities, large generators here, who didn't really want competition from people having solar panels on their roofs. Not sure how true that is. And Mark is saying, and I see you've answered him there, any reaction from Elon, because they don't use LiDAR? And that's true. Elon Musk in Tesla has said that he doesn't want to use LiDAR. He thinks cameras are a better option. I think part of that could be down to the fact that there hasn't been a LiDAR before now that fit on a system on a chip like Mobileye have just produced. Maybe this will change his mind. We'll see. We'll go on. So the next story talks about Fortescue, who are a large Australian mill and mine company, and they're rolling out autonomous light vehicles at their Western Australia mining hub. And, this is just one of several similar stories I've seen. I just said I'd throw it out there because there's been a couple like that. And it speaks to the fact that, autonomous vehicles are coming. They're already, as we can see, in operation in multiple places. There are lots of mines, not just in Australia, but there are lots of mines now that are using autonomous vehicles, be it autonomous, I don't know what they call those big kind of dump trucks that you put the ore into.
Big dump trucks.
There you go. That's the technical term.
It
is. So those big things where the wheels are 2 meters tall.
Yeah.
Komatsu are making autonomous ones of those now, and electric ones. So you have electric autonomous big dump trucks, using the technical term again. And of course, it's easy to roll out autonomous vehicles in places where you have a pretty predictable and static geofenced area. Where it starts to get more complicated is where you're in an area with lots of dynamic infrastructure and people, essentially. Cars and pedestrians and things like that. That's a lot harder to do. I mean, I can see where you've got a good road infrastructure, places like Chandler in Arizona and places like that, where you've got reasonably predictable traffic patterns and things. Trying to roll out an autonomous vehicle here in Seville, in Spain, might be a little more challenging, or in Rome or in Bangalore, Neeraj, for example. Where the driving is a little bit more chaotic. But in mines, in ports is another place where you can see autonomous vehicles being used to move containers around, for example. Again, for similar reasons, it's a bound geofenced area with where the infrastructure is pretty static.
Yeah, well, I think we talked about it last week. You're absolutely right. The places where there is internal infrastructure that is under the control of both from a legal and also from an object point of view of, as you said, the ports, the mines, and things like that. I was talking to John Appleby last night, and he said, the hardest part of any automation is the exception. Okay. And in these environments, you essentially minimize the exceptions, because you can put a transponder on pretty much anything within the mine or the port, thing like that. So it knows where everything is, and it can detect where everything is, either by sight or using the transponder, and therefore collision avoidance systems are so much easier. Whereas when you're out on a street, pedestrians, anything, it becomes harder.
Guide dogs, all that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So it's when I read this, I thought immediately of the comment that we had, the conversation we had last week about internal road networks and things like that, and thought, yep, there it is.
Yeah. And Peter's saying, I see they're using very large bumpers on those trucks, and it doesn't give a lot of confidence. I think that's just an Australian thing, where they're afraid of kangaroos, Peter, if we're honest. Well, Devin is saying they're called ultra class dump trucks, Tom. So a really big dump truck is about as accurate. There you go. Thanks, Devin. Nice one.
Yep.
Neeraj, check out later. Autonomous container ship doing milk runs. Ooh, nice. And he's dropped a YouTube link. Thanks, Neeraj. We'll definitely check that out. Autonomous container boats. And Clement is saying, hi all. Clement, nice to see you. Thanks for joining us. Where are you dropping in from? We have people from all over today. This is fascinating. We'll move on. So this is an interesting one. United Airlines, US airline company, and Peter, you might have comments on this coming from the airline industry yourself. United Airlines have they're flying electric taxis for airport runs, they say. I mean, I don't know what else I'd use them for, but so this is the idea that you use drones that are big enough to house people, and you use them to move people to and fro. The idea being that you could get, the example that's typically used is you could get people from Manhattan to JFK in 15 minutes. And you charge them $150 or whatever. So United have gone ahead and they've bought 200 of these flying electric taxis, and they're going to be moving passengers to and from the airport, they say, within the next 5 years. So, this is becoming more and more real, I think. We've been talking about it for a while, that these are coming, but, this is someone's buying them and they're going to deploy them.
Before regulatory approval as well. That's not an insignificant investment ahead of regulatory approval, which is fascinating. So there's that. That was one of the things that jumped out at me in this story. But look, after 15 odd plus years of being a road warrior, the single biggest stress was leaving the customer side to get to the airport.
Oh yeah.
And you either arrived too early, or you were running across the concourse and begging security not to stop you.
I've done that so many times.
Exactly. And I have to admit, I fall into the I arrived too early. I really hated running for stuff, and so I only run when I'm chased. And so if I would take a later flight, so if I wouldn't take like a 5 o'clock flight, I would always take like a 7 o'clock flight, so I could leave the customer between 4 and 5. And get to where, and I always left like 2 hours to get to the airport, and it didn't really matter because I had lounge access, so that was all fine. But this could actually make life easier. It really could, because in terms of congestion, actually the congestion getting there, perhaps landing, yes, there would be some challenges, but that would just make life so much easier and would ease my stress massively. Of course, then you're having to trust an autonomous vehicle to, a couple of 100 feet in the air. That perhaps has different stressors attached to it. But yeah.
Since lockdown, Chris, I've been going to the gym and everything, but I've still put on 3, maybe 4 kilos, because I'm not sprinting across airline terminals trying to make tight connections. It's incredible. Clement's saying he's watching us from France. So
very nice.
Bonjour, Clement. Peter, interesting. Peter brings up your point as well about the regulations and pilot certification to fly in that airspace, which is another point, because you don't really want to be flying drones around airports. Hasn't there been a lot of trouble around that, particularly in the UK and Los Angeles as well, wasn't there? Los Angeles was closed for a while because of drones flying around there.
But all they do is they will land away from the terminal, stick a monorail in, and you'll just monorail it in, or a hyperloop.
That's a fair point. Yeah. Davin is saying, I thought the FCA had given testing approval to investigate drone taxis. FCA, that's the Irish Reserve Army Force. I'm not sure that's what Davin is referring to. Maybe it's
I don't think they have authority in this matter.
Forsi Coisianta Áitiúla is what FCA stands for in Irish. How do I remember that from my years and years of having done Irish decades ago? Anyway. Clement saying, here in France, we're moving fast in terms of flying taxis. Oh, cool. Airbus is accelerating. Yeah, Airbus are doing some really interesting things with the flying taxis.
Yeah.
It's their Vahana platform, I think. They've got 2 models. One is a single-seater and the other is like a 4 or 5-seater. Really interesting stuff. Just go to anyone's interested in it, go to the Airbus site, because they have them there. I think the first Vahana was licensed for flight about 2 years ago now. So a lot of stuff happening there. And I have an Airbus factory right here in Seville beside me. Right in the airport.
Some of the stuff that Airbus is doing actually in terms of research and development is phenomenal.
It's amazing, yeah.
So it is absolutely phenomenal. But it's one of the interesting things is that because of its links to Europe and also with the European Space Agency, it gives it a lot of scope and a lot of things to work within. But then the corollary of that is actually independence from state funds and conflict of interest. But it is fascinating. So is what some of the stuff they get up to.
Yeah. Victor is saying there's always a traffic jam when I was already late to my flight. That sounds so familiar. Oh my God. I'm getting nightmares just thinking about that, because that happens so often as well. I don't miss that. I don't miss that. And Ted is saying, great discussion, Tom. Ted, lovely to see you again. So Ted was a guest of mine on the Digital Supply Chain podcast a couple of weeks ago. Ted works for a company called Festo Didactic. So you may have heard of Festo, but you may not have heard of Festo Didactic. Festo Didactic are a branch of Festo where they go into third level institutions and they kit them out with a factory with all the robots, the conveyor belts, everything that you would have in a normal factory, including all the data connections, cloud connections, the whole thing, so that the educators, and they do it in conjunction with the faculty there, so that they train the trainers, as it were, and they do it in conjunction with local factories as well, so the local factories, help subsidize it. And so then you get the students working on actual, real, proper machinery that they would see in real life when they graduate from the institution. So we did a great podcast on it a couple of weeks ago. If anyone is interested, check out the podcast. It's at digitalsupplychainpodcast.com. Just search for Ted Rosier and you'll find the podcast there.
Because it was, I have to admit, I got a little bit confused because you were talking about robots and things like that there, and didactic is, I can't remember whether it's Greek or it's Latin, but it's about teaching, it's about learning. So I was sitting thinking, okay, I'm not seeing it here, and I actually just brought up his LinkedIn profile, so I've got it now. Yes, that makes perfect sense. So it does. Throwing things at himself, but yeah.
And Peter's saying, he's been on the Peripherique in Paris during rush hour trying to get to the airport, and we've all done it. Actually, I've got a tip for you there, Peter. If you're in Paris trying to get to or from the airport, get a motorbike taxi. I've done it. It flies through the traffic. It's a really good one. Yeah, I have a number of a motorbike taxi in Paris somewhere that I can find if anyone needs it. Really, really good.
See, I just don't fly. I don't fly in and out of Paris. I actually take the Eurostar or the Gare du Nord, and that's phenomenal because the SAP offices is actually a quick trip to Gare du Nord, and the Eurostar is pretty easy from there.
Sweet. Clement saying the French regulator is thinking of adapting the framework, which is a huge challenge in parallel to the technological innovation to set up. Okay. FAA. Davin meant FAA. That makes more sense.
It does, yes.
Good. And Davin's dropped a link in there as well. eHang are a Chinese flying taxi maker. Air Taxi's first flight from Demo Pilot Electric North Carolina, USFA article. Okay, nice. Okay, very good. Love a good the trainers program. And Peter, if you haven't heard that episode with Ted, you should check it out. It's a really good one. And of course, involving the educators in it means they get to have a big say in the curriculum as well. So it was really, really good. Clement, true, yes, it was a good way to go from Rossi to Para Intramuro. Very good. Peter almost took my hand off because I can pass through the middle. I know. I've done it a few times. I've done it as well in London. There was twice now when I messed up my connections flying through London, and I accidentally booked flying into Gatwick and out of Heathrow, or the other way around. And when I realized my mistake, and I only had like 2 hours between flights, or 2.5 hours between flights, booked a motorbike taxi and made it no problem. It's amazing.
Yep.
Flying taxis are a no-go according to Mark because of their noise pollution. That's not true, Mark. The amount of decibels from these things is much lower than you get from helicopters. It depends on where you want to set your thresholds, but it's nowhere near the noise of the jets you would have in an airport or the helicopters you'd have in an airport. It's much lower. Oh, okay. We'll go back to the news stories.
Let's go back to the stories.
So
this one made me sad. It was good, but it made me sad.
Yeah. So this is a bit of context setting. It's a new study, and it's a new kind of meta study of previous data where they're able to show now, and it's specific to fossil fuel air pollution, kills twice as many people as originally thought. So, we're looking at, wasn't it 8 million people a year or something like that, Chris, that are dying from just from fossil fuel pollution globally. It's horrendous, absolutely horrendous. And
I know.
The other one in this space that I wanted to put in here was this, because it speaks to plastic pollution, and Coca Cola is the world's largest plastic polluter, followed very closely by PepsiCo, and I think Nestle are not far behind.
Nestle's 3 or 4, so it is.
Yeah, so Coca Cola are now trialing a paper bottle. For now, it has a plastic lid, but at least the bottle itself is paper. They have all kinds of complications rolling this out, because where you have the join, they have to make sure that it sticks, it doesn't leak. And also they have to make sure that it'll handle the whole logistics of, being in crates and being in trucks and being lifted out and dropped on counters and all this kind of stuff. So what was the date that they're thinking of rolling these things out? Was it as far out as 2030, Chris?
It is, yeah. The goal is zero waste by 2030. So it is. And Coca-Cola is a fascinating organization, because you have the Coca-Cola bottle, you have the Coca-Cola company, which makes the actual drink, but the company itself is actually subdivided into bottlers and things like that, which is how they are ranked as the #1 plastic polluter, and there have been various things that have happened, legal challenges and lawsuits brought and things like that there, but it's never brought against the parent company Coca-Cola. It's always brought against the individual subsidiary and things like that. It is a fact. When you come, Coca-Cola could do teach fabulously interesting lessons in corporate governance and structure. But this is pretty cool. And when you look at it from a product lifecycle management point of view, it's fascinating, because you have this laudable goal of not of a paper bottle, but then you have to factor in, how do you advertise on it? How do you see, in terms of food safety, how do you make sure it's not leaking chemicals back into the drink, and all those sorts of things. It is genuinely fascinating. But at the same time, there is just a point where you sit and you think, why don't you just use a glass bottle? It's nearly infinitely recyclable.
Yeah, I know. That's what was going through my head as well. I know they're heavy and I know they're expensive, but they're so much better than plastic. And I do my damnedest not to buy plastic bottles anytime I can. Anyway,
like how much money are they actually spending on this? It's really interesting. So it is.
It is.
Hello. Sorry about that. The kids are just back from the forest park.
No worries. Mark is saying you still don't want them buzzing around you 24/7, and that I understand. I suspect, Mark, that these things would be on particular flight paths, that they wouldn't be buzzing all around you. And as you know, we're still very much in early days of this, and the regulations will differ from place to place. But I don't think they'll be buzzing all around us at all. I have one.
Yes, you have your drone.
It's not a flying taxi. It's a Mavic Mini, Mavic Mini 2 drone. But actually, you'd be amazed how quiet it is. This is really, really quiet. You could be beside it, and you would know, but only just. It's a fabulous little drone. And Peter's saying they got millions of people hooked on Coke by adding Coke in the very early days.
Well, yes.
Clement has gone back to work. Thank you, Clement, for joining us. Glass is heavy and adds more carbon emissions in the fuel burn until electric takes over. Yeah.
Yes, it does, Peter. It does indeed. It does indeed.
What was that guy from the BBC who had his kids interrupted a couple of years ago?
Yes.
I saw him on a new ad yesterday for a mobile phone, for an internet company, because he's advertising about working from home and interruptions and things like that. Now he's taking advantage of his internet fame and the whole working from home thing.
Robert Kelly.
There you go. That's it.
Yep.
Some interesting. See you, Clement. Some interesting news out of the energy space. Now, I thought this was very, very cool. We have a 10-point declaration from top energy experts telling us that 100% renewables is possible. Now, we've known this for some time, and we have several grids that are already 100% renewable, and in fact, we have some grids that are over 100% renewable. So this shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. But it's nice to see all the same. Davin saying, lock the door.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, there you go. Bolting stable doors or something, Chris?
Yes, exactly. That story I thought was actually fascinating because it comes back to the fact that, with these points, it's a 10-point declaration. The global coalition of top experts say, yes, this is actually achievable. And again, it comes back to these are people that governments listen to. The ordinary people, perhaps not, but governments listen to these people. They take literature and the studies that these people create and use those to inform and create those plans. And they may not be as far-reaching or as ambitious, but it still has an effect, and that is why it's important.
There you go.
Yep.
Claire is saying, lovely to hear the little voices.
Yeah, just not all the time. No. Do you know what? They've been absolutely brilliant. I could not be more proud of how the three of them have adapted and are living through this. It's phenomenal. So it is. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm lucky. Ours are 14 and 17, so it's a lot easier.
Yeah.
In some respects, but it's a lot easier to at least reason with them about what's going on.
Exactly.
I'm saying my 14-year-old still crashes my Wednesday night meeting every other week. There you go. Yeah. You'd have thought by 14, but anyway.
Yep.
So next story. China's planning to raise the minimum renewable power purchase commitment to 40%. So this is speaking to the different Chinese regions and their requirement to buy renewable power. So they're going to raise that to 40% by 2030. And that's huge. That's absolutely huge, because there are still regions of China where they're building coal-fired power plants. And shifting that from coal to renewables and requiring them to purchase 40% by 2030 is amazing. It'll make a huge difference. It'll create an enormous market for more renewables, which will do what? It will drop the price of renewables, because you'll get massive economies of scale. And you'll also get, again, this whole thing of the learning curve, or the experience curve, as economists call it, where the price drops as you do more of a thing more often. So, these kind of stories I love, because it just means that it makes renewables more the norm, and the price will drop even more, making it more attractive to more regions, and more will be rolled out globally as a consequence of this one action.
Exactly.
Next. This is cool as well. Vestas is now launching the world's largest wind turbine at 15 megawatts. I remember 10 years ago, a 1 megawatt wind turbine was huge. Most of them were 500k. And then they went up to 1, and then 2, and then 3. And then about 4 or 5 years ago, GE announced the Haliade X, which is a 12 megawatt wind turbine. And that was amazing. And now Vestas has gone for a 15 megawatt one. And I mean, what's so cool about having a really big wind turbine? Well, there's a number of things. If you are, particularly for offshore, if you're rolling out wind turbines offshore, the installation and the maintenance is expensive.
Yeah.
So the larger the wind turbine you can install on an individual site, the more energy you get from it for a lower cost of installation and for a lower cost of maintenance. So it's actually a huge deal. And there's a secondary factor as well. And that is, the larger the wind turbine, the larger the blades, the more wind they catch. The more wind they catch, you increase what's called the capacity factor. The capacity factor is the amount of time that the blades are turning, generating electricity. So the larger the wind turbine, the more the blades are turning, generating electricity, and the less installation costs, the less maintenance costs. So the overall cost per kilowatt hour generated drops and drops and drops and drops. So absolutely stunning. The Dogger Bank wind farm.
They use 12 megawatt ones.
They're using the Haliade X 12 megawatt ones. Yeah, they're rolling out 300 of the 12 megawatt Haliade X's for an output of 3.6 gigawatts. Absolutely stunning. Absolutely stunning.
Funny, I actually brought that story up right beside this one because last week we commented that we
Peter.
always seem to bring the biggest and the best, but without any context of what went before. So I did actually bring that story up. But 15 megawatts, that is amazing. On those 12 megawatt ones, a single turn is enough to power a house for like 2 years or something, if I recall. So the 15 megawatt ones, just it's just brilliant.
Yeah,
absolutely phenomenal.
I remember back in 2008 when we opened the data center that I co-founded. It had a 1 megawatt grid connection for a data center. 1 megawatt. This is 15 data centers worth of electricity coming out of that turbine.
Exactly.
Stunning. Absolutely stunning. I thought this was cool as well. People might go, not sure, Tom, but Herbert Diess in a tweet. First of all, Herbert Diess is tweeting. Right there.
Yes.
So, okay, bit of context. Herbert Diess is CEO of Volkswagen. So, boom.
Yes.
He's also very friendly with Elon Musk. So I guess that's helped get him onto Twitter and get him thinking about tweeting. But he tweeted a number of tweets in the last couple of days. This was one of them, part of a thread. He said, it's time for politicians to accept science. Green hydrogen, and green hydrogen is hydrogen that's made from renewable energy. Green hydrogen is needed for steel, for chemicals, for aero, for aviation, and should not end up in cars. It's far too expensive, inefficient, slow, and difficult to roll out and transport. After all, no hydrogen cars in sight. That's not strictly speaking true. Toyota have their Mirai, and there are one or two others, but practically speaking, it's true. The number of Mirais on the road, the number of hydrogen cars on the road is in the low hundreds, maybe mid hundreds. But when you think of the millions of electric vehicles that are on the road, it's essentially zero. And it's absolutely true, because if you look at the energy pathways of hydrogen for cars, it makes no sense, never mind the financial implications. So it was interesting. And what was also interesting about that was a load of comments after it. And if you look down through the comments, Herbert Diess actually answered a couple of them. So it's not just that he's broadcasting, he's actually listening and responding as well, which is fascinating for a guy who is the CEO of a company like Volkswagen. I mean, I know Elon Musk does it, and he's got 15 other companies as well. But you don't associate German CEOs with Twitter very often.
No. And it's interesting because we have talked about this before about green hydrogen, and this actually has a very a very real context in the UK, because there's a new mine that's up for grabs in Cumbria, or I think it's Cumbria. And one of the arguments that they're using is it will strengthen the supply chain for steel. And actually, a number of the I think it was Tata actually came out and said, we're actually moving away from coal for steel. We're actually investing in electric and hydrogen. And that's where we're going. So the UK government are sitting there, and they're trying to say something, and as usual, they're on the wrong side of the argument, really.
Yeah, I put this chart in as well just to show. If you look at the pathways, and this is from Transport and Environment, who are a think tank, who do a lot of studies on transportation, and you can look at the pathway on the left that is directly powering a vehicle from electricity using batteries, and this is for renewable energy. So from production of electricity right through to moving the vehicle, you get to an efficiency of 77%, and they figured that by 2050, with improvements, that'll jump to 81%. The next one is hydrogen. You get 33% efficiency. So, I mean, that's stunningly bad. That's 2.5 times less efficient than direct electrification from batteries. So that means for every wind turbine that you have to install to power a fully electric car, you have to install 2.5 wind turbines to power a hydrogen car to make electricity from renewable energy. And it drops even further if you're doing power to liquid with diesel or power to liquid with petrol, down to 20 and 16%. So it's I mean, just using electric vehicles, stunningly efficient. Anyway, miscellaneous, last story. We're timing it well because I have to jump at the top of the hour because I have another call. So the last story, I know you love this one, Chris. This is the story about the NASA Mars rover, which will be blazing into the Martian atmosphere on Thursday afternoon this week at around, if I remember correctly from the article, I think it's around 11 a.m. Eastern, which is around, it's around now, frankly, on Thursday, a little earlier than now. So this will be broadcast on Twitter, on NASA's page, on NASA's website, on YouTube, on all the places you'd suspect. There will be that 7 minute, what they call the 7 minutes of terror, where there's a blackout, where it's dropping through the atmosphere and all communication is lost. So it's going to be fascinating, and they also make the point in this that there is a Chinese probe and one from the United Arab Emirates as well, all reaching Mars this week. Say again? It's
there already. So the UAE one is there already. I saw the pictures on Instagram a day or two ago, and that's phenomenal. This year is actually going to be so busy for Mars. It really is, and but that's
down to the orbits as well, because they happen at different speeds. They coincide and overlap every, I think it's 26 months. So every 26 months, the two planets are at their closest, and then they start drifting again until 26 months later when they catch up again. And that's the time when you want to time your probes to arrive at Mars. It's at that 26-month time when they're at their closest. That's what you aim for. So this month in particular is going to be spectacular for Mars, and that's why you've had this coincidence of the Chinese, United Arab Emirates, and the NASA probes all hitting around this month anyway.
Yeah, but it's the other bit in this article that is fascinating, and one of the reasons I've been keeping an eye on it is the helicopter. It has a helicopter. Yeah. It has a twin rotor helicopter called Ingenuity. And there's a guy I follow on I've subscribed to on YouTube. His name's Veritasium. It's Derek Mueller, I think. He did a fabulous video on the helicopter at JPL and all the things, because the air density is lower. The lift generated by the rotor is actually, it has a limit. So rather than increasing the size of the rotors, I think what they had to do was actually increase the number of rotors and then the spacing, and then you get into the actual fluid dynamics of the air, and it's really, really cool. So it is
fascinating. It's really fascinating stuff, isn't it?
It is absolutely fascinating. So
last thing I wanted to mention, I mentioned this last week, but for anyone who missed it, tomorrow afternoon I'm hosting a live stream with my colleague David Vallejo. We have a series of 5 live streams happening over, I think it's every second Wednesday. So the last one was on February 2nd. Was it the 2nd? I think so. It was on the 2nd with Keith Zobot, and it was amazing. We had, I think, with the week after, we had something like 3,000 views of it. We had loads of people come on live and leave comments and questions. And the one tomorrow is with David Vallejo, and it's about planning. And they go through 5 different aspects of supply chain. The one with Keith was on the whole engineering side of things. So engineering is a critical part of a resilient, sustainable supply chain. Tomorrow's one is planning as a critical part of a resilient, sustainable supply chain. In 2 weeks, there'll be manufacturing. After that, there will be transportation. And after that, there'll be operation. So, we're going through that kind of series of them. So if anyone wants to join in tomorrow afternoon, 5 p.m. CET, same time as this, essentially. 5 p.m. CET, 11 Eastern, 8 Pacific. Okay, and that's it, folks. Thank you for your interest and attention. And I got to, unfortunately, drop because I have another call. This is a work call in about 2 minutes' time. So thanks everyone for watching, and we shall see you all back here same time next week. Have a great one.
You shall indeed. Thank you very much.